Hello and welcome at the beginning of 5th episode of SPORTSDIP series that is organized jointly by the Embassy of Czech Republic in Washington, D.C. with Czech Olympic Committee. My name is Jan Voska. I work at the Embassy as a cultural attaché, and it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you today with us. We organized the SPORTSDIP for several reasons, but I would say the most important one is to highlight potential of sports as a strategic tool for diplomacy, and secondly, to showcase its role to empower individuals as well as groups. And I think that today's topic, women and sports, overcoming adversity, is going to be a great demonstration of both elements that we are trying to highlight by SPORTSDIP series. The moderator of our discussion is Adéla Kalibová from the Czech Radio. Adéla, as a young reporter, covered the 2014 European Athletics Championship in Zurich, was a host broadcaster producer for the 2015 European Athletics Indoor Championships in Prague, and Czech Radio producer for 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio. Adéla currently resides in Washington, D.C. with her family and looks forward to going back to her Czech Radio position as a head of international relations in 2022. Adéla, we are very excited to have you here with us, and we are also pleased to see all of our terrific panelists. But I will leave their introduction already to Adéla. I will limit my role to say last 1 or 2 sentences, and they will be dedicated just to housekeeping. This is going to be 1 hour-long session, nothing more, nothing less. We will definitely do Q&A at the end. However, you can ask the questions anytime already now. You can see Q&A box in your Zoom screen, and also there is a chat. So submit it Q&A or chat. If the question makes sense already with the current topic, we might already ask it during the discussion now. So don't wait for the Q&A part, ask the questions as we go. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded. Why? Because a lot of people want to see it after it happens, and some of you will enjoy it to the extent that you will ask us to see it again too. Adéla, this is all from me, and please take it away, and I wish everyone a very great discussion.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Jan, for the introduction and for the housekeeping rules, which are very important. I also would like to thank the Embassy of the Czech Republic, as well as their partner organization, Czech Olympic Committee, who jointly present this edition of the Sports Diplomacy series. And as Jan mentioned, the topic today is women and sports overcoming adversity. And I'm absolutely thrilled today, not only because the topic is very important in my opinion, but most of all that we will have an opportunity to speak with my guests. And they are Majken Gilmartin, longtime movie and event producer, soccer player, and certified soccer coach. And she's the CEO of Hillyer Soccer and co-founder of the Global Goals World Cup, which is an activist women's soccer tournament. She is also an organizer of 100+ multiple sports events, inventor of our Global Goals Ball, and founder of long-running Women's Refugee League, Asylum United, which is run day to day by female players and coaches. She is the recipient of 2016 IOC Women and Sport Award Europe, recognizing her as a role model and change agent in the pursuit of gender equality in sports. And in 2019, she received the first national SDG award in Denmark, the Global Goals Award given by the Danish government, and also the Czech Republic SDG Award given by Association of Social Responsibility and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Welcome, Majken.
Thank you so much.
My next guest today is Ilona Burgrová. She's a former international basketball player who was part of the successful team that won the World Championship in 2010, finished in the 7th place at the London Olympics 2012, and won the EuroLeague in 2015. She received her master's degree in health education, promotion, and behavior from the University of South Carolina. And she continued her education later in life with the course of sports diplomacy. She is now a member of the Athletes Commission and a chair of the Commission of Equal Opportunities in Sport of the Czech Olympic Committee, as well as the chair of the Athletes Commission of the Czech Anti-Doping Agency. She continues to coach basketball to youth teams in Prague. An honor to have you, Ilona. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
And last but not least, Dr. Sarah Hillyer, a director of the Center for Sport, Peace and Society at the University of Tennessee, which she launched in 2012. And since then, the center has implemented the US Department of State Global Sports Mentoring Program, which just launched the latest edition last week. And it is a global initiative designed to empower women, girls, and persons with disabilities through sports. In 2018, ESPN named the center's partnership initiative with the US Department of State and the ESPNW as the winner of the Stuart Scott Inspire Award. Sarah, as an educator and consultant with more than 30 years of experience, she's worked with multiple agencies, federations, and companies, creating programs that use the unique attributes of sport and physical activity to create innovative social movements and promote peace around the world. Good morning and welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. So our guests will take us to Denmark, Czech Republic, and the US, but not only there. We will have a peek into lives of many more girls and women in different parts of the world through their stories. As I had a brief chance to speak to Majken, Ilona, and Sarah yesterday, don't expect a boring brochure-style information or dry lists of the problems nor the solutions. This is going to be a very personal, if I can also say maybe an intimate talk, because they're all athletes. All of them are leaders and role models. So my first question goes to all of them. What do you feel are the biggest challenges for girls and women in sports? So Sarah is nodding her head, so maybe I'll give you floor.
Well, I was going to hand it over to one of my sporty sisters, and I should start by saying a huge thank you for organizing this and also for your role in moderating. It is really an honor to be with each of you. Challenges, there are so many, but I love when we talk about them and introduce them and say them out loud, because when we do, we're reminded that it is up to us to do something about them. I shared a little bit yesterday that in our global sports mentoring program, which now has trained 145 women from 66 countries on using sport as a tool for combating some of these challenges exactly. And we normally start our sessions with an activity called Agree, Disagree, Unsure. So for our audience, perhaps you can participate in this too and think about, how would I answer this? And the statement is, violence against women is the most pressing social issue facing women and girls in my community. So would you agree with that statement? Would you disagree with that statement? Or are you unsure how you would answer? In the case of the 145 sisters that we've trained, around 87 to 89% agree with that statement. Then we spend some time unpacking, well, what does violence against women mean? And we think about terms of what comes to your mind immediately, which is most likely physical or sexual violence. But there are many, many other forms of violence that we unpack: emotional, psychological, structural. And we won't get into all those, but perhaps it will come up as my sisters here talk about the challenges. So I would say one of the greatest challenges is violence against women and the broad range of what violence means.
Thank you, Sarah.
I think to add on that, yeah, thank you, Sarah. And first, when you say it, right, I wanted to tell everybody, if you agree, lean to the right. If you disagree, lean to the left. But if you don't see it until you actually start unpacking the words of what violence against women really means, right? How many layers of violence do we see in our society? So I think that's, thank you for sharing that. And I would add to the biggest challenge is that we don't have access. So the access of being physically active as we open the door, from we are a child to we are grown adults and old, is that we need to be able to open our doors and have access. I mean, we know from data that a girl's cycle, when she grows up, is within 500 meters, where a boy's cycle is like 4 kilometers. And if we have less programs, to girls and women, that means that we have to travel outside our safe space of the 500 meters. And then we also know that we adults, even the ones who does sport, we believe that, 2/3 of us, we believe that boys are better at sport than girls are. So that means that when we are going outside of our 500-meter circle, somebody needs to help us with, most likely with either we need to have money for the bus, or we need somebody to drive us. And then if our parents even don't think that we are worth it in that sense, right? The chance that they're going to drive us outside of those 500 meters. So to figure out how we structure our communities and how our cities, and in a way that we have enough programs within our circles. And then of course, a bunch of us also going to make sure that the circles get bigger, but we have to have access to sport, to play and to move throughout our lives, and our cities and our communities have to be built for that, for everyone.
Great, thank you, Majken. Ilona, can I ask you to add
your
point of view?
So many topics, and we have just an hour to touch on some of them. So I'll be speaking from my own experience, which I'm living right now, which is basically a former athlete, retired a couple of years ago, being a mother of 2 years old, and thinking how Majken say how the world should, how I should make the world and the surrounding better for my daughter, as well as fighting the social norms and the issues of being a mother, a former athlete, fighting against the not really welcoming environment of sport for women and former athletes being involved in sports again after their professional career. Those are the topics, dual career, motherhood, parenthood. These are the topics I'll be talking about because this is what I'm living right now.
Okay, great. That's a wide range of topics. And before we open up more on all of them, I was just wondering if at the first stage of your careers or at your engagement, when you were deciding that the sport, the environment, or making women's, girls' lives better, if you had experience with what you're talking about now. Of course, Ilona does. She said she's speaking from her personal experience. With Sarah and Majken, was it on your journey from the very beginning, or did the environment shape your point of view on the course?
So, I mean, I think when I was 5 and growing up with my brothers, I owned the world of sports. Sport was all in the back garden, and it was all about movement and playing, if it was with the Lego or with your footballs and whatever it was. And then suddenly I started school and started established sports, and I, became good at it, but I also lost the ownership of it. I was no longer head of my own sports community, so to speak, because sport became something that you watched on television on Saturdays. So it wasn't in a sense, my world. And so I would play it and endless play a million different sports. And I'm grateful for that part of it, but also the realization that it wasn't women's, in a sense. It wasn't our world to own. Every time there was special rules made if we had to do something, or if we had to participate and stuff like that. So I went into the world of films, and just in the sense of aiming for a place to belong. But then later on in my life was saying that I really need to do something in a world that I really love, but also felt that lots of women don't feel that we belong in that world of sports.
Is it getting any better?
I could just got off a call right now and saying that we cannot break that number of only 10% of women being female being coaches in the world of sports, and that is a really sad number that it's so low, because they are the role models and the inspiration for others to get into the world of sports, and maybe also to change sport into something that where we feel much more strongly connected to it. So is it getting better? I wouldn't. I'm not sure. We have more talks maybe now.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yes. So I should first start by saying I am so grateful, because in the grand scheme of global comparisons, growing up in the United States gave me tremendous privilege and access, relatively speaking, access to education, access to physical activity, sports, being in our education system. And because of Title IX, a law that ensures that there is equal access and opportunity for all educational funding for educational programs, and because sport falls within our education system, it created quite a bit of equity and opportunity and access for me. So I should start by saying I fully realize the privilege and the blessing that I have to have had these experiences. I'll also say that I played basketball on a scholarship, and I had, strangely, a female coach who used my weight as a controlling mechanism. And so every day I would have to go and weigh in, but I never knew how much I should weigh. So it took away all control for me. So on the days that I didn't make weight, I couldn't practice or play in the game that evening. So I would skip my classes, put on a garbage bag, and go to the student rec center and bike all day to lose the water weight, to weigh in again at 2 o'clock to be able to play. I also stopped eating, but in the evenings after training all day, I would eat everything I could. And then of course I would get rid of it because I knew this cycle would start over. So after more than a year of this, I was in trouble with a really unhealthy relationship with food. And so that was the form of violence that I experienced, knowing that athletes experience many forms of violence, female athletes in this world. And so I think that was part of my, if a coach and someone in power can take those things away and cause such destruction, I had the realization that I also have that agency and can use sport to make sure women feel a sense of belonging, hope, strong, and that they realize that their identity is not in what they do as an athlete, but in who they are.
You mentioned that you had a female coach, women coach. How did it help for you dealing with the situation? Do you think it would have been different if the coach was a man?
No, I think it's just more disappointing, to Majken's point, that we need more female coaches. And I know she agrees with this 100%. Not only do we need more female coaches, we need more qualified and empowered and aware coaches to realize how to deal with a female athlete. And I think any of us could speak to this topic. So I don't think it mattered that it was male or female, other than in my own reflection. It's just all the more disappointing to have a woman in leadership that also practiced abuse as a form of motivation.
Okay. Ilona, would you like to follow up on that?
It really hurts me to hear stories like this. And it hurts me twice, because I know that almost all of us have some story, either like personal or from a friend like this. And most of the time, we don't even realize that something is happening to us until we are finished with the sport. We come out of our little bubble, and other people tell us that, oh, no, this is not normal. Like no one should bully you because of the weight or because of some other issue. No one should be telling you like not to eat healthy or abstain from food. Those stories just like hurts my heart. And it proves me that really a lot of people think that if you're an athlete, your next career should be coaching, right? That's like your path. But that's definitely not true. And even though we're talking about more female in coaching, all coaches should be educated in psychology on topics like this, because only if we have safe environment for all of our athletes, you know, we can probably get more women who needs that kind of comfy support and this great environment to actually participate in sport. With, I think, I'm talking from my experience. Yeah, I think it's a big issue.
Okay, so we mentioned underrepresentation in different positions, not only in coaches stage, but also in, let me say, federations, Olympic committees, or all other forms of sports bodies. We also mentioned that there's a lack of access, and maybe we could mention like a lack of education for some of the girls, lack of finances to participate in sport, and lack of support. I just want to bring this up to know that we are talking about something that in a way might be getting better, but still is not. And I was wondering, when we say this out loud, you dedicate your energy to making lives of disabled people, girls and women better. How do you do it? How do you approach it in everyday life? Because you are the ones who are very active, you leaders and your role models. So what are the tools that you've decided are the best for tackling this situation?
Majken, you go.
Go.
Yeah. Teach us.
I think the first thing when now I'm going to put up the ball, right? With this is Arabic,
yes,
but this is
Global
World Cup football. But when UN they were going to implement the global goals, then we were a handful or more women trying to see if we could get physical education under quality education. Because if we could get that into the UN, goals, then that would mean that there would be about 60 million plus girls around the world who should have access to sport in schools that doesn't have access to sport today. So we didn't succeed in this, but it created a conversation with them. I think we came in a bit too late in really trying to push that one, but it created a conversation with the UN, and it. I think the realization that sport could play a role, and they wrote in Mandela's famous quote of sport being able to create change. And then we thought, okay, then what we do? We are a playful sports organization out of Denmark. What do we do? And then the first thing we did is that we talked to UN about putting all the icons on a ball, so at least we had something physical, and that became a thing. And then we said, okay, next step. And then we said, if we're going to do something, we're women, right? So if we, and it's like, okay, let's do a World Cup. But what if we were going to do a World Cup the way that we thought a World Cup should look like? What do we do? Who should be our partners? And what is the rules? So we kind of just sat there and threw everything up in the air. And we could see from data from around the world that there's a lot of women who doesn't come out. First of all, we decided we wanted to do it. We wanted to do it for women. We want all women to be able to participate in our tournaments, because there's not enough, crazy, wild, beautiful events for women to participate in and practice up to and join in on. And but we could also see a lot of women, they don't join teams because they feel they don't want to leave their kids, they don't want to leave their family, they don't want to leave their studies and all of this just to do sports in a sense, right? So it's like, okay, let's add purpose. So the whole idea in our tournament is that you have to pick one of the global goals and you have to do an activation for it to qualify into our tournaments. And just that part of it really gave us a whole new level of conversations with women, because they were not just about being good players. It was not about being the strongest player in the world, but in a sense, being the strongest player for the world, right? So the creativity of them doing activations, planting trees and whatever activations were important for them as a team became, so for us, it's been kind of just it's sports, right? It's movement, it's our ability to play. So, and in play, you come up with all different kind of rules all the time, right? And we just did the same. We just decided to make a World Cup for women that was kind of an activist World Cup, where we've changed the rules to, and we've made 17 of these tournaments around the world, and we constantly adjust way we do things together with the women that are playing in our tournaments. Of course, we dream that we can play in all the 193 countries that have signed on to the global goals by 2030. We'll see how the funding world of funding women's sport is not so high. But yeah, so I think it's the whole thing about changing, and remember that we have the right to change things, and we have the right to work with people in the way that we want to work with people is ours.
Okay, great. Sarah?
I was giving a thumbs up to my sister. What you have done is brilliant and so impactful. So congratulations. Many of the women that have come through our U.S. Department of State Global Sports Mentoring Program are following you around the world to these tournaments, and they're using it as a spot and a reason for reunions for them. So so congratulations. And I feel so connected to you beyond this webinar. And so thank you for what you're doing on behalf of women all over the world. For us, I started an organization after that moment of getting out of college and feeling, I promised myself actually the day I graduated that I would never have anything to do with sports again the rest of my life. That was the promise I made, because I was so scared and so broken at that moment. I had a degree, an undergraduate degree in sports administration. So I didn't know how I was going to get away from that and what else I would do, because sports was always a part. So I one morning woke up and as I shared, I had this realization that I also have agency and I can do something good. So I started a nonprofit organization called Sport for Peace. And it was about helping female athletes find peace within themselves. To Ilona's point, in having enough self-awareness to find peace within while we're trapped inside these elite sporting bubbles, if you will. And when you're in that bubble, you lose sight of self-knowledge somehow. So I did that as a nonprofit for 15 years. And literally I did it by selling brownies and cookies and washing cars is how I funded it.
Wow.
Because I didn't know how else to do it. So I would organize trips for female student athletes or former student athletes, coaches, parents, and we just began traveling the world together. We started close at our southern border and went to Mexico and then Brazil, and then we ended up in Turkey, and then the Middle East and North Africa opened up, because in the sporting world, federations and Olympic committees were finding out about this group in Kentucky that does free, friendly exchanges and helps develop their women's sports teams. And so we would go and play teams in exhibition matches or friendly matches to raise money for earthquake victims. So it was just very organic, just as we went to countries and found local partners and came from their invitation, we would just build programs with them together in friendships. So in 1999, of all places, as an American female, I ended up in the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I ended up there 1 month every year for the next 10 years. And of all things, they asked me to develop fast pitch women's softball and help with the Islamic Federation of Women's Sports, which was housed there. But then it was beyond that. It was to many Muslim majority nations. While I was in Iran and I'm seeing this evolution of policies changing, women changing, families changing because of sport and access to safe sport, I thought, I can't sell enough brownies or wash enough cars to scale this. I think what I need to scale are my skill sets. And so literally that's how I ended up at the University of Tennessee to do a PhD in sport sociology. So sport at the intersection of race, gender, culture, religion. And while I was here, I thought, well, I could go back to the nonprofit world, or I can take on higher education and try to change curriculum so that every sport management student or sport related discipline that's being studied, kinesiology or whatever, that sport and social impact or sport and social change is not one unit, one class out of a 4-year degree, but rather becomes infused and embedded so that anyone who graduates and heads off to the sport industry, sport is a tool for positive social impact, is just part of their DNA. It's not an anomaly in one class that they forgot about. So that's how we're using sport, is through higher education and then a partnership with the U.S. Department of State.
Unmuted. Thank you. That sounds great. It's like, for me, very inspirational, saying believe in the cause, and you don't have to have the finances at the first stage. You have to go through with it, and you just have to believe it, get people on your side. That's what I'm getting from this now. And also this time I will ask you how the mentoring program works later on. And I've heard that Ilona is preparing something similar to empower and encourage other women. She's working with her team on a mentoring program. So maybe all of you should join in, and maybe you have an inspiration there. So Ilona, what are tools that you've decided are the best to get the world of women's sports better?
No, I just want to say, ladies, what a great project you have started, really. And the stories, so inspirational. I'm so glad that we have you here today, and we can share all of this, or you are sharing it with us. You know, I have been appointed to be a chair of the Commission of Equal Opportunities in Sport not even a year ago. But the first thing which I thought would be beneficial for our women in Czech Republic who want to enter the sports field, or who are in the sports field and want to stay in, is mentoring program. So I actually reached out to one of the non-profit organization in Czech Republic called Odyssey, who already did mentoring program for the women in business. And I just simply asked if they have some, you know, things which they can share with me. And they just offered me a full service. They were like, we will do it for you. You just, you know, give us the women, the mentors, the mentees, and we will pair it up. We will make sure that everything goes smoothly. So right now we are going through the first year. And I'm really glad that we not only have a female mentors, but we have also a male mentors, because that's something which is really important on our way to reach the goal of equity. We need male to understand the topics we're struggling with. We need them to sponsor us on the places where we cannot simply be right now, or we are not. We need them to, you know, be our voice and tell other men, hey, you know, these are the topics. Try to think about them in a different way, or maybe just say our names. Hey, this is a woman. She's really amazing for this job. You should consider her. Which is not happening right now in a lot of cases. So I'm really glad that we have some men involved in the program. And my goal is to actually increase this number and get more male sponsors in this case. So mentoring and actually reaching out to more federation and trying to find more males who would be interested in the topic. That's my goal for next year.
I love it. One of our Kenyan sisters from our mentoring program, she was describing exactly this, is, you know, gender equity or equity in anything. She said, it's like a bird. And in order to fly above the challenges that our communities are facing, birds have 2 wings, right? For the balance that we need to fly above problems. So the male or the feminine, or the feminine female and the male masculine, we need both male and female together like a bird so that we can fly together. And I thought it was a beautiful analogy because even to the point of today, our guess would be that the large majority of people attending are women, but it can't just continue to be women talking to women about women's issues. I want to know about men's issues. I want to know about inclusion for everybody and for no one to feel marginalized. So I 100% agree. So here's to the birds, the two-winged birds for equity, and a big shout out to the men that are on this call, and a huge thank you for being interested in this topic. We actually love you and need you and appreciate and respect you.
Well, thank you so much to all the men. I'm gonna pop in a question that I got from the audience now. It's hello, it's Hiba El Jafil, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, from Lebanon, founder for Unity for Change, NGO, former captain for the Lebanese women football national team and former national team head coach. They won the Arab Cup in 2016. And she listened to most of the problems you mentioned, different countries, sexual violence or sexual violence, other gender equality. But she says that she didn't hear about the political problem as she's facing. She's facing a huge political problem in her country. In order to succeed, she needs to follow the politicians and get whatever I want or work the way I would love to. And I will never do that. Any suggestions on how I can deal with this kind of politician problem? So who would like to answer that? We have a political...
I definitely don't think I have an answer for it. But I think it's a very... sport has and should always have the room for politics and having discussions and conversations. In our case, when we played in Amman in May, we happened to play exactly that week where Palestine and Israel were bombing each other, and we realized that. Being right there at that time, and suddenly we became a platform for our teams to have these conversations, and for us to realize how little we were used to having these conversations in sports and having an opinion about what happens in our countries. So this is not it's not any solution to your question, but it is definitely figure out for all of us, how do we create safe spaces for us to have these conversations about how do we change, laws, how do we change cultures within our countries without feeling that we necessarily go against everything all the time, but we collaborate with people and finding ways of opening doors and keeping the doors open for next generations and stuff like that. But definitely finding out where are the spaces that we can have these conversations. I think that those are really key. And if they don't exist, maybe speak about that. That is what, that we are, or you want to try to create. You want to create a safe space where we can have these conversations.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
I would maybe two or three things. One, you are not alone in feeling this way and facing this challenge. So I know it feels, and what Lebanon is going through is so incredibly challenging, politically, economically. You all have suffered so much. And so know that you are not alone. There are a lot of people that see what is happening and care about what is happening. Number two, don't ever say out loud again, it's something I can't do. I won't be able to do this. You can, but you have to, at some moment, realize the historical time that you're living in. And instead of thinking about how do I tackle the macro, how do I tackle politics, that is something that in many ways is outside your control. So start with what you can control. And the first thing you can control is your own mindset, your own growth. And then the other thing you can control is finding other women who feel the same frustration and share the same passions as you. So surround yourself, broaden your webs of support, and find other women who feel this way, and find comfort and solace in being together and sharing. And then focus on just changing one girl or woman's life in your periphery, because that is something you have control over. So your mindset, surround yourself with other women who feel this way, and just worry about changing one person's life instead of a whole nation's. And step by step by step by step, that movement will grow, the momentum will grow, and you'll find change within your community and ripple effect. Start there so you don't frustrate yourself or become too tired and burned out and just give up. You're an elite athlete, so you have what it takes, the resiliency to do those things. And remember that all of us here are here with you, and you definitely are not alone.
Yeah, I definitely want to say that we are working in Jordan and reach out. I mean, and have a second conversation about this, because we're introducing a coach program for 100 women in Jordan next year, and maybe there is a connection there, but we are, as you are, just women trying to create change. And I'll be happy, really, really happy, just to connect with you and have more conversations about this.
I also have some women in Lebanon that are doing this work that I would love to make introductions to.
Okay, that's great to hear. And maybe if we're already offering help, could you speak more about your mentoring programs and how the people who are interested can get in, what they have to do in order to participate? Sarah?
Majken, go ahead. You're ready. And
I was just gonna say, Sarah, you go now.
So ours is, and I am so grateful for our U.S. Department of State. And the way it works is they send out an announcement to embassies, the U.S. embassies all over the world. And those embassies are responsible for identifying the women and men in our program that is titled Sport for Community, that works to empower persons with disabilities. So with that, the embassies play a critical role in identifying the change makers and those that are using sport in their community to do something to improve society. So make sure, if you are interested, that you let your U.S. embassy know. Send them your CV, tell them that you have interest in participating in the mentorship program, and ask that you be considered as part of the nomination process. The program only happens once a year, one focused on gender equity, the other focused on persons with disabilities. But for us, that would be the first place to start. And then I'm also happy to drop in our chat the link to the Global Sports Mentoring Program so people can learn more in case they have additional questions.
Thank you. Sounds great. Majken?
Yeah, so mentoring programs, I think there's the way that we're building the Global Goals World Cup works the way that either people in other countries, they find us or we find them, and we have these conversations if they want to build the Global Goals World Cup in their country locally. And it becomes a year-long, beautiful guiding process and building friendships in creating a tournament. And I think now, having done 17 of them, and the realization of the strength of working this way, that the women that are doing our tournaments in their country, the voice that they get within their country of having to build something, big and complicated, really gives them their space. And so there is something, in a sense, in that process that I would say that is a beautiful leadership and learningship and friendship that comes out of that. And then we run these coach programs, again, those 10% of trying to figure out. And when you say 100 people in Jordan, you feel like, okay, that sounds like a lot in a sense, right? But at the same time, it's such a small number when we, in what we have to change in it. So if anyone is in those regions and want to be part of the coach program, look up our website. The sign up for coaches are there. We have 2 different level of kind of coaches that we're looking for. And so I think that's what we, in a sense, how we guide and in our lives. And I run Asylum United also. I don't run it anymore. Young Women runs it here in Denmark, but it's, weekly training at refugee camps in Denmark. And again, some of those programs, they also have this effect of leadership elements. Our job, all of our jobs here is, in a sense, is that try to open the door and try to keep it open. It's like, never close the door after you. Of these doors in getting more access for women into the world of sports, or into the world of sports.
Okay, so there's some guidance, and for all those who are interested, there's Majken's email address and a link from Sarah in the Q&A box. And Ilona, your mentoring program is still in progress, and you're gonna launch it soon. So I'm gonna ask you a question from audience. There's a question from Aneta Graubmillerová, and she's asking, what does the Czech and National Olympic Committee has to do to address the issue of abuse of women in Czech sport?
I think safe sport and safeguarding in sport is an issue which is very important to us, but not always is on the top of the list of many people in federations. And I think it's people like to talk about it, but they don't take actions. I think Aneta knows that our former chair of the commission, Nadia Knore, she has been doing a lot of work to put this topic on the top of the list of many organizations. But unfortunately, this work goes really slowly. I have to say that it's not necessarily the goal of the Czech Olympic Committee, but it should be the goal of the national sports organization, who should be like an umbrella for all the sports organizations, which is the Olympic Committee is not. Nevertheless, we will be trying to do some step forwards in sports safeguarding. Currently, I'm involved in the safeguarding course of the IOC. So I'm looking forward to actually make some changes, not only within the Olympic Committee, our Olympic Committee, but also to extend all my knowledge to all Czech federations which are interested in making the step forward and really and truly make this issue something which is on top of their list.
Thank you. Jan is telling me that there's a question he got, and he's going to ask it now.
Yes, I got one question, but actually I will be selfish and I will first ask the question that I prepared, because I think it comes in the right time. Aneta already asked about roles, and I want to follow up and give it more sort of diplomatic flavor, because we are organizing this webinar on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And Sarah already spoke about all the amazing things that State Department is doing when it comes to that, but also State Department is massive institution, like its public diplomacy capabilities are incredible in comparison to most of the regular ministries, to say so. So my question is, what is the role that ministries of foreign affairs or embassies in respective countries can play when it comes to empowering women and girls through sports?
So that one, I mean, we didn't think that we were ever gonna work with embassies, but they have become a closer and closer, somehow partner or in our work. And what they do is that they, by recognizing what we do, is that they're recognizing the need for sport for women. And for the women in our case that are working on doing our tournaments, they might have access to the political world, but they might not. So in my case, the Danish embassies or embassies in general, they can both help open those doors, but they can also, validate that women are doing sport, and that we push that agenda as embassies into countries. I think is a great role that you can play. I will say that there is something that we haven't seen yet. There's more that you can do, because maybe also collectively between embassies, we're working with a few embassies in Brazil, where they're embassies that both sit in the Security Council right now. So having also adding some of the political, in a sense, voices in there, like, Norway, Brazil, Ireland, they are in Security Council. Does that mean that we can have the conversation in those countries about the UN 1325 document about women and peace and safe institutions? So, and the more the embassies do these things, the more they realize that they can play that role. Not only just being really good with trade, but also really doing good with, having the voice for women.
Yeah. Is that it? You want someone to expand on it, or you're muted?
I didn't want to belabor it for Jan, but I think maybe another, just to build on Majken's answers, and we say this all the time, that social change is a team sport. And we also, because I'm in Tennessee, which means we listen to country music. Many of you know this, we're the heart of country music. There is a country song called Meet in the Middle, and it's a cute little love country song. And I like to think about meeting in the middle, because there are bottom-up approaches to social change. And in this case, empowering women and girls, gender equity. And there can be all sorts of grassroots efforts to do this. But only grassroots, without the policies and the structures in place, don't really gain that tipping point in societies needed. On the other hand, if everything is a top-down approach, government imposed, and there's no grassroots buy-in or activity, and it's just forced down upon people, we also know that it's not effective. So then if you talk about economic impact and the role that companies and corporations play, and the massive influence that they have through media, advertising, and corporate spending, corporate dollars, they really shape mindsets and popular culture. The way we see the world in many cases is from companies. So we like to think in terms of meeting in the middle and making sure that government is involved, whether that's local somehow, small local, all the way up to your national governments, with effective grassroots. And then in the middle is maybe if we made a triangle out of it instead of a linear up and down, then it would be what the Coca-Cola executive CEO said numerous years ago, that real strength in social change comes from a golden triangle, where government is involved in some way, civil society, education systems, and then corporations. So that may be another way to look at it or to strategize. And I think our embassies, they are there. Any embassy is there to promote peace within those communities and friendly relations. And what does that better than sport when it's used in an intentional way? So social change is a team sport. So approach it. Surround yourself with teammates that can help you achieve your social goals.
I cannot add anything else, because Sarah and Majken just said it all. My words would be unnecessary. So I leave it with this great words of Sarah and Majken.
Okay, supposing Jan has no other questions at the moment, I have one from Maricelo. How can we use sport as a vehicle to promote diversity, inclusion, and empathy in women's and young girls' lives during a time in the US that is seeing extreme hatred and racism? How can we ensure that women of color are feeling represented? I do not believe it is enough to simply have a woman of color as a coach, but one who is willing to take action against hatred and protect women and young girls of all backgrounds. This should be a goal on all levels of sport, even the silent decision makers behind the sport. Do you agree with this statement? Majken's pointing somewhere.
Are you pointing towards the American?
Probably.
Well, sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for this question. And I don't know in 2 minutes if we can answer it. I think for, generations, we've been trying to wrestle with such complex issues. 100%. Sport should be used as a vehicle to promote diversity, inclusion, and empathy. And I think I'm going to use this is a very American sports analogy, but if you're familiar with the old late night talk show host, Jay Leno. So Jay Leno was a comedian, but he's famous for collecting cars. So he's got acres and lots of space for cars. Old vintage cars, miles and miles and miles of it. And I always say that if I were to go into Jay Leno's garage, no matter how long I stand there, I will never turn into a car. And the analogy is this: just because we roll a soccer ball or onto a field or a basketball onto a court does not mean that an appreciation for the other is automatically going to happen. That is in the hands of the heroes known as parents, coaches, those adults that have influence over young minds. So I think that sport, when facilitated with intentionality to promote understanding between people, to embrace the differences. I also would never put 5 point guards on the court for the championship game. There's no diversity there. They're all the same height. They all have the same skills. We're going to get slaughtered on the court. So in the same way, when you think about team sports, we need diversity and we need to include the talents and the skills and the perspectives of our teammates. And so those things, again, don't happen, or kids don't realize, oh, we would never put 5 point guards on a court. We need to tell them in ways that they can connect with, that are fun and empowering, and that they can take ownership, and that they can transfer what they're learning on the court or on the field into the classroom the next day or into the community the next day with a distinct and intentional appreciation of diversity and inclusion.
I would just say amen to that. And thank you so much. There was a question from audience if, I see now, the referee added 3 more minutes to the overtime that was asked for by the audience. So we have 3 more minutes to go. I have a very unfortunately hypothetical question for all of you, but imagine you have all the means in terms of finances and the power. What would you change in sports right away on the spot so the environment would be more equal for girls and women? And
I know I have talked way too much, but I would say the first thing I would do is hire these 2 women right here. I would hire Ilona and Majken and let them take over. That's all I have to say.
I'll take that job. I promise.
So whoever's listening and has offer for all these women and other women, come up to me and I will distribute the jobs at the moment. But back to my question, Majken, what would you do? Having in mind, you have all the power, all the money, everything you've got. What do you change? Number one thing.
I would change the financial system in the world. I think that would be the first thing that I would try to change, because there's something that we haven't realized yet in the world of how the structure of power and the structure of power between people and schools and countries and stuff like that. So figuring out new ways of either breaking down the system that we have now to build up a more inclusive way. But of course, I have no idea how to do that. So that, that takes a load of brain power from all of us to come together to figure out new ways on levels of how is government run and how is relationships with the countries being developed and all. So it's definitely a long conversation. But I will say, if we, not how we solve things, but if we think about sport, and we think about all the games that we create and all the trainings and practices, and if we can think ways that the people who go onto the field, when they go off the field, as better friends. So right now we have a culture where we don't really get off the field as better friends, but if we could find those ways, in all our, communities, of making everyone feeling stronger when they get off on their bike to drive, to get home after a game, that would change something.
And Jan, you have an inspiration for your next panel. Majken just said that's a broad topic, so there you go, make your note. Ilona?
Yeah, I think everything is so interconnected. It's hard to pick one thing which would really would change this topic for better, but I would just put more women in charge, because the different view could help make things a little bit better, would maybe turn some minds around about what sport actually is, what can offer, and what should be the result of playing sport, not really being medals, but becoming a better person, making a better society, having these values on top of the list, not only the medals and winning games.
Okay, thank you. So we used our 3 more additional minutes that the referee gave us. Thank you so much. And let me just say, to conclude, 3 things that were said in the panel. I want to say, change the rules, start with what you can control, and put more women in control, in charge. So that's what the panelists said today. It was a great session. Thank you, Majken. Thank you, Ilona. Thank you, Sarah. And also thank you so much for the audience and the brave men in there. Also, thank you for all the questions asked. And if you can, just go now for a walk, kick a ball, or get somehow physically active, because it matters. So have a good afternoon. And what would we agreed in the beginning? All of you, let's do the flexi photo.
Yes.
And have a big applause for all of you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, everybody put your muscles back up. It's a reminder that together we are stronger. And I am going to, I'm going to take our picture for social media, reminding us that we are stronger together. If I can
we need your muscles.
Okay.
Yes,
she's going to
okay, let me close. My computer's not working. Can anybody else take a screen capture?
I am taking screenshot.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, it's coming. I think that is the best ending we could get. Thank you everyone so much for coming, for listening to it, and our dear panelists and moderator. Thank you so much, and see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
High fives, everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye, guys.